All right, welcome back. You are listening to TangibleTalks podcast, and we're your host. I'm Jana, and you are...
I'm Rita, Aunt Rita.
So we have had some technical difficulties over the past couple of weeks, and our scheduled episode did not release this past weekend. So we did on YouTube, it didn't on the podcast platforms, and so we've both been so busy with work and different things, 4th of July, we didn't even notice. And so I noticed it, and I was like, oh, well, now we're going to be off. So what we decided to do, since we have a lot of new listeners and a lot of listeners who don't really know who we are, I thought it might be neat to just kind of have a introductory episode, just a little bit about our background, our relationship to one another, just for you guys to get to know us a little bit better and a little bit more about our stories, And we've got an upcoming series that's going to be a little bit more personal, so we thought that it would be helpful to provide a little bit more insight into our past. So that's what we're going to do today. It is very unscripted, very just go with the flow type episode, so we will see how that goes.
Yeah.
That's what we are.
Wait, when did I find out that we were doing this? Was it
this morning?
Okay. It was just a few hours ago, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
I walked my dog Sydney this morning, and I was just thinking about, well, what are we going to do to make this a little more cohesive? And the idea came to me, and as most ideas do when I am outside. So
Yes.
we're going to roll with it.
That sounds great. Yeah, you got to know where your ideas come from.
Yeah.
You got to know where your piece is, where you go to regroup, to gather strength, and you'll be renewed and you'll have renewed ideas. So I'm thankful that you and Sydney went on your walk, and it's a bit scary at times, because
Walking?
we're unscripted. No,
What do you mean?
because we're unscripted. It's scary sometimes when you send me a text message and say, hey, do you think we could do this? And because, I probably could say no, but if I was going to say no, I would have said no in January.
No, a long time ago.
Yes. It's a little too late to say no.
Yeah. Well, I really like to know. So I love podcasts. I listen to a whole bunch of them, and I like to know who I'm listening to. It just gives you a little more context about what they're talking about. So that's, I think, maybe what sparked that a little bit, and just seeing that we're 20 something episodes into this now. So most of you who are hanging around listening to us don't actually know us. So what I have found is that people that know you don't really want to listen to you.
Oh, that's the truth. Well,
and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in a, we both have had people comment, they're like, oh, they kind of feel guilty about not listening to it. And I was like, don't worry about it. You talk to us all the time. I can understand why it may not interest them so much, because, they know us. They hear us on a daily basis. So
yeah, and then my children, they grew up with me talking. So they're like, we've kind of heard it before.
Yeah. And I think that just depends on your interest too. I know the couple of people who have told me that they don't really like listening to podcasts, period. So
see, I don't understand that.
But it's just
yeah, I really like listening to podcasts.
Oh, I do too. I love it.
I think it harkens, don't you love that old word? It harkens back to the time of the radio, maybe during the World Wars. Not that I'm that old, but people would gather around the radio and listen. And then they would also have, they would tell stories, or they would have somebody, a guest speaker that would speak. And I remember just a little bit of that when I was small. So I associate podcast with that. I just think that they just put it in a different package. It's the same thing.
To me, so I don't have any recollection of, I've never really listened to a radio. I actually hate listening to the radio because I'm such a visual person, but a podcast to me it's almost like a phone call with a friend. I mean, it's one-sided, but I don't know. It's just, when I listen to them, it's something a little more personal, and I like that.
So do you wanna start off introducing yourself?
I
That kinda
can.
gives me a format and a way for me to go. It's my turn.
I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to be super organized, but I will try my best. So, yeah, my name is Jana Hunt. I am, I had to think about it. I am 33. I kind of forget my age sometimes. So, I will just start off with that. I have accidentally told people that I am the wrong age. I feel like I got to 28 and just never aged anymore. So, I have to keep reminding myself that I am continuing to get older. So, I am married, have been married for 11 years now. So, got married pretty young compared to a lot of people today. I have a 5-year-old daughter who I call JoJo. My family lives in Nashville. I also have a almost 14-year-old mini Aussie named Sydney. She's usually up here hanging out with me. Not as much anymore though, because once it becomes late in the day, the stairs are getting hard for her. So she'll come up with me in the mornings, but then not so much in the evening. So, but I do think of her as my first child. Love animals. I've always loved animals. My profession, I'm a data analyst. Been doing that for about 2 years now. Before that, I was a high school math teacher. I did that. I guess I worked for about almost 6.5 years in that field, but took some time off with my daughter. So it kind of depends on how you look at it. But I taught for a time frame of close to a decade, but took some time off. So used to love teaching. I thought that that's what I was always going to do. I've always really loved math. I know I'm one of those crazy numbers people. Some of you will absolutely relate to that out there, and then others will be like, "Oh my goodness, you're crazy." Rita probably thinks the latter. But yeah, I always had a strong passion to help other people, and I loved math, so that just seemed like the perfect meet in the middle occupation for me. And the first couple years, I really truly did love it. Originally, I'm from Alabama. My family lived in Alabama my whole growing up life. I went to the University of Alabama for college, and then I got married right after I graduated. So, backstory on my husband, Jordan, he was also an education major. And we were both going to be teachers. We were going to move down to the Alabama coast and we were going to travel during the summers and it was going to be great. Well, Jordan, so he's a year older than me. He graduated a year older before me in college too. And he up and decides after his about probably a month or two into teaching, he hated it. And so he was kind of looking for some different alternatives and wasn't necessarily sure what he wanted to do. But in my mind, we were always going to move down to the coast. I love the water, always loved the beach. That really speaks to me. So then, about 3 to 4 months before we are to get married, he interviews for a job in South Dakota. And at first, I'm thinking, yeah, that's fine. You go do your interview out in South Dakota, and it probably won't happen, but I'll let you go do your thing, make you feel better. Well, sure enough, he got the job in South Dakota. And so that's where we're moving. So that was a big change, moving from growing up, living in Alabama my entire life, expecting to go down to the beach, and then moving to South Dakota. But we did that, ended up loving it. I loved it there. I don't think he loved it as much as I did, but I taught there for 2 years, made really great connections with my students and the other teachers and people in the community. I really do love the West and the Midwest. Like I just think that the Midwesterners are some of the best people in the world. Um, so that was a really good experience. We lived there for 2 years. Then we moved to Connecticut. He got a different, so he's involved in athletics. And so he was kind of moving up in his career and got a job at UConn. We were there for 2 years. I have shared in the podcast early in our first series, I think, around change, that the beginning of Connecticut was a really difficult time for me. Just it was a big change. But once I got used to it, once I got to working, and I worked with a really great department at my school, and that really helped me. I made really good relationships there. Got to play golf with a little women's group that it was just a lot of fun. And so once I made connections and met some people, my mindset changed a lot, and it was a lot of fun getting to go into New York and getting to go to Boston, because we weren't too far away from those things. And so for a country girl from Alabama, getting exposure to some of those things was honestly really eye-opening and a lot of fun later on. So by the end, once we moved from Connecticut, I was really sad that we left. We went from Connecticut and we are now in Nashville. So this is where we've been for the past 7 years, which is really
Wow,
hard to believe
7?
now.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
We talk about it all the time. It's like, for whatever reason, South Dakota and Connecticut, I think because they were so different than our life growing up in Alabama, those years, and we didn't have a kid, it's hard for me to believe that we've lived in Nashville almost twice as long as the other two combined. But yeah. And we love it in Nashville. It's a great city. There are lots to do. We had our daughter here, and so yeah, it's a special place.
That's a good review. Do I have to tell my age since you told your age?
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Okay, well.
I did because I just,
You know, it doesn't
number.
bother me. It doesn't bother me because, like you said, you got stuck in your 20s and you think you're still there. Something happened in my 40s, and I just don't. I really have to shake myself to go, whoa, I'm old. So I'm going to be 63 in just a couple of weeks. So I'm Rita Zena. I married in December of this year. So I'm a newlywed, and I am from Tuscaloosa originally and worked at the University of Alabama. I am a graphic artist. I'm more of an artist, but I can't. Technology likes me. So when the internet came along, and this is going to really shock a lot of people, there was a time before the internet. And when I became familiar with the concept of email and internet and all that, I went, oh, this is where everything's going. So I taught myself. I'm self-taught in the basics, and then switched over from one department at UA to the more technical division that was just starting up. But I just remember there was a job for a web designer developer, and it was a full-time temporary because they weren't quite sure if the internet was going to catch on. But 6 months into it, of course, it became permanent.
That's crazy to think about.
Isn't that crazy to think about? And Jana's Jana's mother is my sister. So, of course, I've known Jana all of her life. But about 7, 8 years ago, we started having little conversations. And we kind of discussed deep things, I think. So,
Yeah, that's really the way that I roll. I am an awful small talker. I hate talking about myself too, which is why my intro is so bad. But I like to talk on a deep level. Like, I like to talk about things that I think that matter
yeah,
on a deep
ideas or
level.
concepts. Yeah. And I like to do that too. I don't do well with small talk. And a lot of people are amazed by that. And I'm an introvert, and people are amazed by that as well. But if there's a big party, I'm going to be in the corner. I'm just going to have one person I want to talk with. And I'm fascinated by many subjects. I like knowledge. I like learning. And in 1990, I seriously became a believer in Jesus. And I picked the Bible up and I wanted to know about it. And so I began my journey, which what, Jana, is you were born in 1990, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's how long I've been studying it. It doesn't by any means I'm an expert, but it does mean my heart is in it. I retired from full-time work at the university after 25 years, but I still do projects and I still have clients and I do things, continuously work. You will hear me mention in the podcast that my sister Kathy, who's Jana's mother, and I took care of our mother at the end of her life. And there were a lot of major changes that went on at that time. That it was like everything was leading up to that time that the three of us were in the same house together. And my growing up background is very dysfunctional. My mother had me when she just turned 19. She wasn't married. And then later she married my father, and he had difficulty. He was an alcoholic, and he just struggled with life. He just couldn't seem to get it together. And he and my mother would fight and they would argue, and it was very abusive, even physically. So I spent a lot of time back and forth, either at daddy's or at my grandmother's. So I was constantly on the move until I was a teenager. I didn't fit in really well in my family. I was close to my grandmother, my mother's mother, who was a brilliant woman and talented. She did photography. She could hand tint photos. But I had a strained relationship with daddy and with my mom, and that caused me to want to overcompensate. I wanted to prove myself. I wasn't secure. I always doubted myself, which is another reason that I didn't get my college degree till I was 50. I didn't graduate college till I was 50. Mainly because when daddy would drink, he was abusive to us, and especially me, and would say things like, "You're stupid. You'll never amount to anything. No one will ever want you. You're going to end up in an insane asylum." And those were the things that daddy would say. And I was sensitive and took that into my heart. My sister just went, he didn't know what he was talking about. And it didn't faze her, but it really fazed me. And so I always wondered why my mom and I weren't close. I wondered what happened to daddy. And during the time that I was taking care of my mom, she did not know who her father was. And so I had done ancestry research because I like history. And I said, "Mama, I think I can find your dad. Why don't I do a DNA test? And I think I can find your dad. I can find my grandfather." She was hesitant about that, but I did it. And the results were shocking. And it took me on a really interesting journey. And I'm glad that I was the age that I was when this happened. And I realized that there was a reason why it was different. And it didn't matter because God had a plan for my life. And in this journey, He changed my heart. He changed my insecurity. And it wasn't overnight. It was a difficult, hard thing, which is what life is. Life is not easy. And in that, I came to grips with my childhood and with things in my past, and basically put them to rest and have this new grace and peace in my life. So at this time, I have a lot of peace, and I have gained wisdom and understanding. I have more patience. I think I'm a little more gentle. I try to be humble. I try to be loving. But when you come from an abusive background, it, it you're starting off in a deficit and you have a long way to go. But the grace of God is so good. And so now at this time in my life, I am enjoying being married. Tommy and I live in Tuscaloosa, and we're enjoying some really good things in our life right now.
Yeah, and I love how your story, like, you all got married, both in your 60s. And I think for a lot of our listeners out there who, or either have started over from a past relationship or, have lost a loved one, I think that you're a good testimony to it's never too late for anything, to find love or to graduate with a degree. You continuously do that over and over again. I think that's something really neat about you, because I know other people who don't necessarily still have that same outlook on life.
Well, before I met Tommy, I had been married for 17 years. And the marriage wasn't a good marriage, but we had 2 children, and that is just priceless. But the marriage did not last. And I was so bitter. I was so broken that I really did not care to be married. I didn't think it was a good idea. I was pretty much, I took the scripture that it wasn't good for man to be alone. And I just took that and said, yeah, but God didn't say anything about women. He said it wasn't good for man to be alone, nothing about women. And my girls asked if I thought I would marry again. I said, you know how the Red Sea parted and the Israelites walked through? I said, God needs to part the clouds and speak to me and say, I want you to do this. And I held true to that. I did date. I dated once. Didn't turn out too good. And so I really had no plans of ever marrying. Not again. I didn't think that. I just thought that, I'm just one of those weird ones. It's going to be okay. I remember having a conversation with Carson when he was younger, and he calls me Riri. He said, Riri, why don't you have a husband? And I said, well, do you think I should have a husband? He says, yeah, every woman should have a husband. I said, okay. I said, but now if I have a husband, then I'll need to take care of him and I'll spend my time with him, and I won't be able to take you on trips, and we can't go to the library or the science center and all that. And he stopped. He said, maybe you don't need a husband. but I was 62 before I really was ready to have the relationship. It took that long for me. And I don't want to blame someone else. I don't want to blame my mother or my father. But there was a lot of brokenness there. And God put me together. I still have a ways to go. But I'm getting to see this on this side of the grave. I'm getting to experience some things on this side. And I'm getting to understand why Daddy said some of the things to me that he said. And I understand why I kind of set my mom on edge whenever I was around her. I have that understanding now, and I don't harbor any ill will or unforgiveness.
I want to talk a little bit about our relationship and a couple of things that stick out to you. And then I thought that I would share mine too. And I can even go first if you want me to. But you have been my aunt my entire life. So when I reflect back and think about, there are moments throughout our relationship that stick out to me. And I'm sure you have some too. But I thought it would be fun to share those.
Okay.
Do you want me to go first?
Let me go first.
Okay.
Okay, because I just remember you as a child. You were always on a mission. Um, if your mom dropped you off at your granny's, you would stand at the door and wait until your mother turned the corner, and then you'd look at Granny and go, "Let's go to the store." You go to the store, you'd walk in, you knew which aisle you wanted to go down. I want that. Put it in the cart, pay for it, let's go home. It that I loved that little characteristic about you. And then when we went to Disney World together, and it was the coldest December, and the park, not many people were there, even at the holiday, because it was so very cold. And so we went into Space Mountain, which is the inside roller coaster. I got on the roller coaster. I don't remember if the adults rode or not. They may have the first time. And we got on, and it was so much fun. And we got off, and we were standing in the lobby, and the adults, even though I am one, they were over there. "Oh, should we go home? It's cold. I'm kind of hungry." Doing the grumbly thing. And I looked at you kids and I said, "Let's go again." And we ran and we rode the roller coaster again, and we got out and we came back. The adults were still there, and you just stood looking at me. You were so tiny, big eyes, like, "Is she going to do it again?" And I saw you and I said, "Let's do it again." We did it again. And then the next time, because no one was there, they just let us stay on. Do you remember that?
I do.
And so I I just remember you didn't beg me. You didn't say anything. You just stood there and watched, and you wanted to see what I was going to do. That's from when you were small, and I've just always remembered that about you.
Yeah, and I still love Disney. I'm actually going to Disney with my family in a couple of weeks. I would say a lot of those things I'm still very much that way. I feel like I am always on a mission. I get an idea in my mind, I wanna get it done. I don't really meander. I don't like to just go look at things. Like, I usually like to have a purpose,
Hmm. Yeah,
and I
I'm on a
still love
mission
rides.
too. Yeah, if I'm going into a store, I have a list. I'm going in, I'm getting it, and I'm leaving. For I'm not there for a social party. I am not a shopper. I am pretty
Yeah.
much let's cut out all the fluff and let's get to the heart of the matter. So
Yeah.
I think we really connect on that.
Yeah, I think so too. Some of the things that I really remember or stand out to me. So, I don't remember how old I was, but one of the first things that I remember doing is we went to so my mom is a shopper. My sister was a shopper. They both loved to shop, and so I would have to go with them, tag along, and I hated it. Well, one day we were up in the Summit, which the Summit is in Birmingham, Alabama. It's an outdoor shopping center. And we were going shopping, and I just kind of rolled my eyes because I just didn't like it. And here at the Harry Potter movies were playing in the theater. I don't remember which one it was. I have no idea. And you said, "Well, hey, me, and Katie can go watch a movie." And I was just so excited. And I remember being introduced to the Harry Potter series through that. And it was just, that was something that we all had in common from there on out.
Mm.
It's like an experience.
Yeah, because my oldest daughter, Jessie, is a shopper. And
Mhm.
okay, and that's great if you're a shopper. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Be you. But I cannot go in a store and look at every item on
No, it
every
stresses me
rack.
out. It's too
And
much for
and
me.
then go to another store and do the same thing, and another store and do the same thing, and compare prices, and then go back to the first store that you went to. And didn't we go to the movie and then go to the bookstore and then
Yeah,
go
we
and
went to
find
Barnes& and
them
Noble.
in the first store that they were in, right?
Yeah. And the
And they
Harry
were
Potter movies are long.
and they were happy. They were happy,
Yeah,
and we
they
were
were happy
happy.
and we were happy, and it was a lot of fun. That's one of the first memories I have of really doing something outside of like, being at your house or you being at our house or whatnot.
Yeah.
Because in the holidays, I feel like it's very common for like we had a lot of kids in our family. There were 5 of us within 4 years of age.
Mhm.
And so we were always playing together and the adults would always just talk. And so we didn't really bother with y'all because we found what y'all were doing to be boring and we just wanted to play. So that was one of the first things I truly remember doing together. And then we went on a cruise. So our families
Mm.
both went on a cruise. And I don't know, I think we went to Mexico,
Mm.
our 2 stops. It was just like a little 4-night cruise. But I remember eating dinner, like we all ate dinner together at a big table. And so everybody would kind of do their own thing during the day and then we meet back for dinner. And I just remember you being really adventurous in the things that you ordered because you could, like on a cruise, the menu is set up where every night's a different menu, but you get like several different options. And I remember you ordering a bunch of different things that like nobody in my family would have ordered. And I was always the oddball in my family because I always wanted to try these different things. And I think my mom always got really nervous when I would go to restaurants because I'd order these really random things. And I think she always thought that I wasn't going to eat it or because I ate a lot too. So
Yes.
I think I stopped eating on the kids' meal at about 6 because it just wasn't, I
Yeah.
needed more food. And so I think she always got nervous that I was like, oh, she's going to order this expensive meal and then not eat it. And then she eventually learned that, like, no, you should just let her try it. And so you were one of the first people that I had been around who also would try different and new things. And so I picked up on that cruise and just kind of noted it. I don't know, like I just remember kind of connecting in that way because my family always just sort of they were just different. Like that was different from them in that way. And then I do remember the Disney trip
Oh.
with the whole family. And just there definitely were the adventurers and the non-adventurers.
Mm.
And the people who really liked the rides and the people who did not want to ride the rides. And so that was fun. I was actually talking to my mom about this the other day. I feel like a lot of things that I look back and remember from my childhood have to do with some type of vacation or some type of travel.
Mm.
And those experiences really sink in deep into my memory. And I think that that's why now as an adult, I love to travel so much because when I really think back, in my lifetime, like those are the happiest family memories that I have, either with my immediate family or extended family. We're traveling and doing those experiences with them. They really stick out. And so I want that time with my family now too.
Yeah, I do like to travel. And there are times you don't know where I am. You're just like, where are you right now?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you dropped one on us not too long ago.
yeah,
That
not
I
too
was like,
long
wait, you're
ago.
going where? You're doing
Yeah.
what?
With you, with families, we know each other, but we don't know each other. And when your sister Krista was getting married, I, was a single mom, so I didn't have a lot of money. But I love photography, and so I did the photos for Krista, and that was my gift to her. And we found this beautiful place at the Botanical Gardens in Birmingham. There was this rock, and she's up there, and she's just beautiful. And the wind comes and it catches her veil, and it just blows it out straight. And you couldn't have posed this in a
No, I
studio
mean the
with a
picture should
fan.
have been in a magazine. It really is
It
stunning.
it was just one of those moments. And so when you were getting married, I did the same thing. And so I said, "Well, where do you wanna go?" And you were like, "I wanna go where Krista had her picture." And that day, we just had the best conversation.
Yeah, it was
Um
probably the first time that we truly talked.
Mhm. truly talked, and you shared school, your visions, and of course you were getting married, Jordan, and it was the best day. And I realized at that moment that if there's any family people that do photography, they should so give those gifts, because we were just doing the bride photos. I did take your wedding
Hmm.
photos as well, but my goodness, the wedding is just so hectic.
Yeah.
But that day, spending that day with you and seeing you in the dress and choosing different places and looking at the lighting and all that, that was, that may have been the beginning of, it was more than you are my niece and I'm your aunt. It was a little deeper than that at that time, and we just kind of continued.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but yeah, that probably is where it our adult friendship began.
Hmm. And we don't have to do a lot of preemptive conversations when we talk. Generally, hey Jana, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's over, and then
It's
we can sit here.
usually fitting it in.
Yeah.
That yeah.
Uh, and I love that I'm older and listening to you and listening to your ideas and your thoughts, and how you and Jordan parent JoJo. That is an honor for me. But it's, I don't think a lot of people reach out to older adults who have wisdom and get a get a relationship, and you can gain
Yeah.
so much from that relationship.
Yeah. I like to keep a balance of both. And I think moving off at 22 and being really totally on our own. So Jordan, literally all of our family lived in Alabama. He had a couple of relatives in California, I guess, but we were totally on our own. And so I think the having that experience, I found it really important to make friends and make acquaintances and those things. And I happened to work with a lot of teachers who were older than me. And we went to church and met. I was by far the youngest person in my women's group. And so I got to meet a lot of people older than me. And that became something that I was just comfortable doing. And I did find a lot of value in it because I learned a lot.
Mm.
And then on the flip side, now that I'm getting older, like my last teaching job or my current role, I'm not quite in the middle, but I'm shifting more to the middle than on the younger end of things. And so I like for example, in my current role, there are several younger 20-year-olds who I value their friendship too, because they provide a different perspective and a freshness on life that you may not always get on the other end. So I think it's good to have a mixture and a balance of friends from all across the age range. I think you get a lot of wisdom in all of it. Or in just like even like when you and Aiden came to visit. I mean, having the Aiden is your grandson who's in high school, and just the conversations with him. And I do truly miss that about teaching and like really getting to know younger people, because they do. They give you a perspective that when you truly take the time to hear them out, I think that's valuable too.
Isn't there something that said most people don't listen today? They listen to comment. They
Mm,
they we're always prepared to say the next thing. And in families, it can be difficult with your children or grandchildren because they come up and they want to say something. You go, look, I don't have time, or we've already talked about this, and you tend to be short, and that's so sad.
yeah.
That's so sad. And my mindset has changed on that. Another thing is, we cannot protect anyone from life. Life is coming. What we can do is arm them with wisdom, but they've got to stretch those muscles. And if they fall, then when they stand up, they're not beginning again from scratch. They're beginning from experience. And experience is invaluable We need those experiences. And I think they come from relationships, and I think it's age, but I also think it has to do with different cultures and even classes. People who maybe are on the upper end financially, the ones that are not, who are struggling, the in betweens, someone that isn't the same color skin as you, someone who has been here in America all their lives, and then some that just got here. We can learn something really wonderful if you're willing to share. They need to share, you need to share, and so the relationship can spin up. But when you ask if I wanted to do something, wanted to do the podcast, I went, oh yeah, that sounds great. And then today when you said, hey, I think we should do this, and I went, okay, that's great. Because I know what I'm good at, and I know I can complicate something terribly. I can really overcomplicate things. So I love your vision, and I'm certain that you're rolling with it, that you've thought it through. And that gives me a lot of freedom. That gives me freedom from worrying about that, which I shouldn't worry, but I still will. And it gives us a chance to share. So this is kind of a unique coupling in this. And as you said at the start, we had some technical difficulties. And
Yeah.
I can be technical in some things, and you can too, but this is a new world. I mean, we just jumped off the high dive. It wasn't even the diving board, baby. It was the high dive, and went into this. But we're dedicated. We are persistent. We're both persistent in our personalities.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think it's important to just realize that no one is perfect and things go wrong all the time. Things come up all the time. And that used to would have really stressed me out as far as like, oh my goodness, the podcast didn't release. What are we going to do? It's not perfect anymore. And you
mm,
know what? That really doesn't matter.
no. Well, it was so funny because you said it didn't release. I said, what do you mean it didn't release?
And I do typically check to make sure that it went out. And I usually get a notification, and just being gone all weekend, I just didn't realize it. But that's okay.
It's okay.
It's
I
okay.
don't think we would have had this conversation
No, we wouldn't have.
otherwise.
And so,
And so that's the trusting. That's the trusting that it will work out. And so I just went, well, okay, we're just going to go a different way than what we thought we were going to go. And that's okay with me too. Because we're going to start a new series on
yeah.
the heart. And
Yeah. So, our upcoming series, we talked a lot about what we wanted to do as we were wrapping up the Gospels. And we both felt like it came up multiple times in that series about the heart of the matter and just really getting into what that means. And so that's the direction that we are headed. So after our remembering, and if you're listening on YouTube, this one releases, then the next week we will have have that series starting. So
yeah,
excited about that.
I am excited about it. We do get excited
We
about
do.
the
And
things that we're
I
interested
think our
in.
plan is to kind of connect some of that series into some relationships, like your relationship with your spouse, relationship with your family. And so we thought, or I thought, and Rita agreed to it. Like, well, let's provide a little bit more background on what that is. And just actually, I don't think we ever really introduced ourselves in any of the podcasts, because at first, pretty much the only people that were listening to us knew us. And now we've got new listeners, and we're so thankful for you guys and appreciate so much that you join in and listen along. And so, yeah, we thought
Yeah.
might be a good time now.
And I hope that if you're listening today, that your takeaway, your tangible takeaway is that we are not perfect people. I am far from it. And we're all pushing through. We're all working on forgetting those things that have happened to us, that are behind us.
And
And
I even want to take it a step further. I think so many people get crippled by their past. And I just kind of view the past as like, I mean, I've definitely made some mistakes, and we will get into some of those in our next series. But you can't undo your past, but you can learn from it.
Mhm.
And the way that I think your past is always a part of who you are, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing.
No.
Like don't fixate on the shame and the guilt. Learn from it.
Well,
Let it go and move.
and don't remain in the past.
Yeah.
Get out of that situation. And everyone on the face of this earth is struggling with something, or someone that you meet. They are either struggling with something you've struggled with before, or else they have gone through it and they can help you. And so, getting into the series on the heart and how to recognize what's in us and what that does to us, how we react because of past pain, or we're trying to build walls so that someone doesn't hurt us. It will guide your life more than you even realize.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this was going to be a short one.
Yeah.
But I think we probably need to wrap it up.
Yes. Well, as we always do, I would like to close in prayer. Lord, thank you that you are the God of all creation, that you have created all things. You've created seasons, you've created times, you've created us in your image. And Lord, thank you. Lord, help us. Help us not to fall into temptation. But if we do, help us pass the test. Help us push forward. Lord, thank you for those who listen. Lord, I ask that you touch the ones that are struggling, the ones who feel depressed, and just getting out of bed is difficult. Lord, strengthen them. Help them to become grateful for the things they do have. If it's just one thing, be thankful for that. And Lord, I ask that you touch those that are searching for directions in life. Is it time to go? Should we stay? God, you are the answer, and you lead us. Thank you for this time. Thank you for giving us purpose. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, we want to thank you for hanging around and listening to all of our ramblings today. Again, we appreciate you following along, and we look forward to meeting you back here next week. This one will release on YouTube as a standalone, and then if you're listening to this on some type of podcast platform, we will also be releasing our last episode of the Gospels, because again, it didn't release when we scheduled it to. So these two will release together. So again, appreciate you so much. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.